Hey guys, so if you've been following this channel for a while now, you know one of the big hot button topics that we talk about is the Fisa abuse, the Mueller probe, the Russia investigation, the corruption in the FBI and DOJ that led up to the Mueller probe as what it is today, and all of the events that transpired and declassifications and things. So I kind of want to go through just like kind of an informal discussion about what I think is going on and kind of why we need to be a little more patient. I know I'm very amped up about this and want this declassified, but I think there's a much larger play going on, and we've touched on this a little bit in the past, but I kind of want to reiterate it because some new information has come out, some new things people are saying, and I think it's kind of showing that build up. So to kind of clarify, if you're unfamiliar with this situation, I'll try to do it quickly because I can tend to drone on about this forever because it's something I'm really like interested in. But basically what happened was we know that the DNC through Perkins Coie and through Fusion GPS funded Christopher Steele to go make this dossier. He pays a bunch of Russian oligarchs and all these people to get basically bullshit information. There's some notes to put in that there are some Australian diplomats involved, some MI6 agents involved. There's a big story here, but basically where it comes down to the FISA was the fact that this Steele dossier, which was completely unverified, completely fabricated, has just minimal elements of truth to it, was used by the Department of Justice and the FBI to get a federal secret warrant to spy on Carter Page, who was working for the Trump campaign during the 2016 election. Now, the interesting thing of note to this that you have to remember is that Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch did a Freedom of Information Act back in August and found out that there was never a hearing at all done on this. This was completely rubber stamped, sent through, and they were spying on the active member of a campaign for someone running for president without absolutely ever verifying any of the information. What they did was there was a journalist called Michael Isikoff. He wrote an article for Yahoo News where he basically he did use the Steele dossier to get the information to write the article. So what these FBI agents and DOJ did was when they were formulating the documentation for the FISA warrant, they cited both sources. They cited the Steele dossier and they cited this Yahoo News article as basically corroborating sources without providing the information that it was actually one source built off of the other source. It's just using the same information twice and trying to claim that it came from two different places. Well, what happened was this goes forward, just gets rubber stamped by some judges. Nobody ever tries to verify anything. And now we have Devin Nunes coming out saying now, and of course we had basically three what he calls buckets, where he was talking about how there was hidden information. The FBI didn't release this. He wants Trump to declassify, so on and so on. But he's got this quote-unquote fourth bucket. Now he's saying basically the House investigation is done. He wants this declassified, and he says what this will show is inexplicably that the FBI and DOJ withheld key information from the FISA court. So they put these documents forward, they got rubber stamped, and they withheld the fact that they basically knew the Steele dossier was bullshit, that it was opposition research, and it was not verified. And they knew it, and they willingly withheld that information from the FISA court because I would imagine if in a reasonable system, a reasonable judicial system, if a judge were to oversee that information and they said, look, we want to spy on this guy, here's our source. He's basically a foreign MI6 agent that's being paid by the Hillary Clinton campaign and through the DNC's money. He fabricated this story. We can't verify any of the information, but we want to get a secret warrant to spy on a U.S. citizen, and they're just happen to be working for the campaign of the individual running against the person who paid for the dossier to begin with. I severely doubt that a FISA judge would have approved that. Well, they withheld all this information. But what I think is going on here is I think there's always been a bigger play, and we've talked about it. We know there's always been a bigger play to this. But I think that these things are finally coming in motion. I think a lot of this FISA declass was to get the cockroaches to scatter. It was to get people to make stupid mistakes, to start chattering about it, and they've probably been intercepting that information somewhat through the NSA or whoever. Maybe there are warrants out there that we don't know about, FISA warrants on some of these characters that were involved. We know that Bruce Orr has gone before the House. He's effectively cooperating. Lisa Page seemingly was cooperating. Peter Strzok was not. Andrew McCabe was not. We know that this goes all the way up to Loretta Lynch, Sally Yates. It hasn't gotten there yet, but I project that's where it's going next. I've been saying that for a while. It's currently kind of on Rod Rosenstein. But a lot of us were upset that nothing had happened yet, but we have to understand why. Jeff Sessions is partly why things didn't happen. He recused himself from the Russia investigation. I would imagine, if just thinking about it from a logical perspective, that anything involving this Russia investigation, he would be recused from. So he couldn't actively really go after these people. This all had to go through Rod Rosenstein or the House, which we saw. Anything that's really come out currently on Bruce Orr, Andy McCabe, all this stuff has come out through the House of Representatives investigations, not through the Department of Justice. And that's mainly because Jeff Sessions was recused, so he really couldn't do anything. He basically didn't want any parts of this, or maybe it was a bigger play, who knows. However, nothing could happen. Now things have changed. With Matthew Whitaker as the acting attorney general, he is not recused. He can go after these characters. He can start getting involved in the middle of this. And understand, I don't think the Mueller probe is their ploy, is what they're going after. And that's what the mainstream media is trying to fearmonger here, that Trump is going to come in and shut down the Mueller probe. He has absolutely no reason to. Nothing that we know of it indicates him at all. Even if it did, let's hypothetically say that there was some kind of negative, information on him. If he were to abolish the Mueller probe tomorrow, I assure you that the 13 angry Democrats would certainly leak that to the media. So he knows this, right? And now, if he was going to do that, we have to think logically too. If he was going to abolish the Mueller probe, he would have done it when he had a Republican House. He wouldn't have waited until the Democrats took control of the House. It doesn't make any sense. So they're just full of shit to begin with. So what I think was done here is they wanted to get through the midterms, right? Keep Sessions on, get through the midterms. Matthew Whitaker is now the acting attorney general. He is no longer bound by that recusal. He can begin to investigate this stuff. And that's what's interesting, because you're having a lot of reports coming out now. And this is actually out of the Washington Times, that, and this is the headline, the article gives a little more detail, but Trump conservatives demand probe into Clinton Steele Moscow links. I think that's the bigger play here. And I think this is what they've been waiting for, is they want to do a full probe or full investigation into the whole thing. It has to be done through the Department of Justice, really, because now the House is kind of out of the picture. From what we've heard from Nunes and others, that investigation is being turned over to the Senate, like we talked about was going to happen anyway. I think we all knew that. Excuse me again. But the bigger play here, I think, is the bigger picture, right? The Fisa Declass is just a part of it. I don't know that we're going to see it anytime soon. I would suspect if you wanted to really get this probe started, this is how you would do it. You would declassify all of the Fisa abuse. You would allow that buzz to then build up to the next level. And you would say, okay, here we have this corrupt FBI and DOJ under the Obama administration. Rod Rosenstein is implicated heavily in this because he reassigned these Fisa warrants, like twice, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. He re-signed them. He claims he didn't even read them, which we know is bullshit anyway. But he reapproved the Fisa warrant. So he's implicated in this as well, which is why without Whitaker, nothing would ever happen. You can't go to Rosenstein because Rosenstein, of course, is implicated in all of this. He's never going to investigate himself. But what I would imagine a good play to be is declassify the Fisa documents. That creates a buzz, creates a shitstorm. Everybody begins to talk about the abuse within the DOJ, the FBI, and now you begin to work that up through the DOJ. I think that's the play here, and I think the ultimate cap is, again, the administration that allowed this to happen. And we're also seeing stuff coming out of Judicial Watch as well. I give Tom Fitton a lot of credit. He's on the ground doing some hard work. But that Hillary Clinton is going to have to resubmit and under oath questions about her email servers and questions about the Awan brothers and about the IT scandal and who really hacked the DNC servers. I think most of us understand there was no hack. There's no evidence. They won't turn the servers over to the FBI. It was a leak from within inside, most likely Seth Rich, who was then subsequently murdered over that, is what the proposed theory is. So that's what I think the bigger play is here. I think FISA was just the beginning, and it is just the beginning, and I think we've known that, but it's a bigger play, and we got to be patient for it because it's going to be tactically dropped. And I imagine if I was in that administration, I would hold this. I'd keep gathering your information. Matthew Whitaker's in there. We know that Huber has been out there in where is he? Utah, I think, investigating things going on. I think a lot of it has probably had to do with this. They're preparing the groundwork for this. And I think when the time is right, the FISA declass is going to come. But I would probably wait until you need it. So let's be honest. This is a huge play. This is the pun intended trump card that they have, is this ridiculous government abuse that was handed down from pretty high up within. And I would imagine partly through the Hillary State Department as well. Or not the Hillary State Department, but the Loretta Lynch Justice Department, and it was gone down the line. There's a lot of people, I'm sure Obama knew about this stuff. We know that he potentially was sending emails in this whole thing with the Hillary Clinton emails. He was using a private email as well. There's a lot going on that I think we're just not privy to. But the Declass is just the beginning. And I think it's what's going to be used to start it. But like where I was going with that is I would wait until you need it. Wait until something comes out, some new scandal, some new bullshit the media wants to throw at you, and then use this to cycle off. And this is something I think when we first heard that Trump was talking about declassifying, that I was saying that I thought he was going to wait until like he was in a hot seat over something to bring this up, which is smart politically. You know, this could be a great tactic to take heat off of you. Maybe there's a play that he's going to do coming up and they want to save that, but I think it's the groundwork. I think that the Fisa is going to come, but it's going to come when it's ready to move, when it's ready, when Whitaker is fully in place, when he's fully established. You know, there's some state of Maryland is wasting their taxpayers' money trying to fight this in court. You have a handful of House Democrats, Senate Democrats trying to block this as well, and that's all going to be sorted out. We know the law on the special appointments. Whitaker's going to stay in place unless we have these activist judges or whatever, and then it goes to the Supreme Court, and Brett Kavanaugh gets to reenact his revenge upon the Democratic Party by holding Whitaker in place. Then it's going to happen one way or the other. I think Whitaker's going to stay, unless you get, again, somebody that comes in, whoever it may be, that is the new attorney general. There's a lot of names floating around. Trey Gowdy's been one of them, who I know is kind of questionable. It's very out there whether he's a swamp dweller or he's actually just played along to get along. I don't propose to know that. I think that my hackles go up a little bit with him because of some of the stuff towards the end of his career within the House of Representatives and some of the comments and things. So there's little hackles there. But I think Whitaker is a good play on this, and we know how we did a video on this. We know how he feels about the Mueller probe. But I think it's all just getting ready to happen. I think that we're seeing that groundwork fully laid at this point. And I think we all want this Declass to come like today, and it'd be great, but I wouldn't expect it like today or tomorrow. It's going to happen. Eventually it's going to be declassified. I can't imagine Trump goes through his entire presidency, albeit, another 2 years or another 6 years, and doesn't release all of this corrupt information. It all validates everything he's been saying for 2 years. He's been tweeting about this. He has the power to declassify it. It's going to come out eventually, but I think it's just a matter of laying the groundwork. It's a matter of building the case, and we've been talking about this for a long time. That's what the whole deal with. This is why we started with Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. Lisa Page and Peter Strzok's email or text messages led us to Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe led us to Bruce Orr, who was the connection between the FBI and the DOJ because his wife was working for Fusion GPS, was one of the Russian basically the Russian analyst analyzing the Russian situation and Russian information and things. And he was the connection between the two. He was speaking directly to the FBI as well as the DOJ. We've worked our way up, and again, I think Sally Yates is probably who's going to come up next in the talk, and then we're going to move to Loretta Lynch. It's not over. It's just, the midterm stalled things a little bit. Jeff Sessions held things back a lot. Now that Whitaker's in, you're going to see this begin to activate, and I think that's why you're seeing Nunes come out now saying he wants this fourth bucket of emails declassified that show that the FBI and DOJ willfully denied information to the FISA courts. That's a play. We also have Trump coming out saying he wants a probe, as well as other Republicans and such, a probe into Hillary Clinton's connections and with the Steele dossier, as well as the Steele dossier, Christopher Steele's connections to the Russian government and whether he was involved with Russian collusion to influence the election, because it's seemingly anybody that had connections with Russia 10 years ago, i.e. Paul Manafort, apparently is Russian collusion or something according to Robert Mueller. So then why not Christopher Steele and Hillary Clinton for hiring him? So that's a big question. So a lot of people are starting to bring these questions up, and this is how it's all operated. If you've watched through this whole probe, or the probe into the probe, I guess, what's happened is they've dropped a lot of questions. Trump comes out, he poses these questions. The House generally backs him up on some of this stuff with a release of information or a request for a declass or whatever. And I think that that's the next step. We have, at this point, Trump calling for this special probe. We now have this investigation moving to the Senate. We have Jeff Sessions resigning at the behest of Trump. We have Matthew Whitaker, who was opposed to the Mueller probe, stepping in things are lining up. Things are all kind of coming into play, and I expect it to start to move. It's not going to move fast because government is slow as shit and inefficient, but it's beginning, I think. I think that we're through that initial stage where we prep the public enough, where the public understands enough about what happened. Well, if you're educated on it, if you listen to some mainstream media, probably not, but understands enough the abuse that took place on Carter Page. We have the hints now that Papadopoulos was probably under a FISA investigation as well. I think that's going to come out later. He has hinted to that. Nothing from official sources have alluded to it, as far as people that were involved in the FBI or anything, the DOJ or anything like that, or the FISA courts themselves or any kind of declassification. But he's alluded to, he thinks that he was probably under one. It's all going to come out. I think it all starts with Carter Page. It's going to move forward. It's going to go up. But we just got to be a little patient. And I think that the players are on the board now. I think everybody that needs to be there is there at this point. And it's going to start moving. It's going to start happening. And it's going to be slow. And it's going to be tactical. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen at some point, probably within 2019. I think we're going to see that Declass come, hopefully sooner than later. But hopefully the Declass will lead to a full-on investigation into Christopher Steele, into the Steele dossier, into the connections with the DNC. And based on some of the stuff coming out of Judicial Watch, it looks like the Awan brothers, the IT scandal, the email probe, all of that's going to factor back into this. It's all going to come full circle. A lot of people claiming the lock her up stuff. Why hasn't Trump locked her up? And I can totally sympathize with that line of thinking. Totally. However, I think it's all circling back. I think this was their way in, and it's going to circle back around to all that corruption, and it's all going to lead full circle. So I would expect to see this. I think Whitaker is the key in this beginning. He's the placeholder. He's the key to getting this started. He can come in. He can basically do what he wants. He's in there for very short, I think 180 days. He can or propose to Trump to declassify a bunch of stuff, open a bunch of investigations before the Senate elected official comes in. Those investigations are open and ongoing by the time that new appointee comes in, and we are basically on our way to actually understanding what happened during that election and the collusion that went on between the FBI, the DOJ, and the Obama administration.